what winning organizations do. The Houston Texans have decided to let egos, to let emotion, to let feelings get in the way of fielding the best team possible. Justin Reid was a professional, and as the leader of the team, he answered a question that was asked of him. Now he won't suit up. This is one of the best players on the team, a player that sacrificed much for the Houston Texans. Now he's repaid by not getting his helmet because he was honest.
Welcome to another episode of the Turn Up For What podcast, talking your Houston Texans straight from the Great British Isles. Just back or travelling from Houston, so got an express edition this week as we look back on what was kind of a strange weekend that kind of crystallised many things I've thought about this team for the last while, and it gave you a lot to take away and kind of consider, about where this franchise is. And it was a tough loss as the Texans dropped the game 21-14 against the Jets. A game which you probably would have expected them to win, in all honesty, and I think many people would have said that, but it wasn't to be. And a rather tepid second half performance didn't put a point on the board. So when that's the case, you've not got much chance of winning in this league, regardless who your opposition is, despite a Jets team that looked more than there for the taking. But there you go. And I suppose the team was rocked pre-game, or certainly it was, the news rocked many of us as we're sort of preparing to make our way inside the stadium. But the news of Justin Reid being suspended, not suspended, probably not the right phrase, but certainly held out of the game for an internal discipline issue. And I think that was odd when you thought about the context of who the guy is and what he's done for the team. When you see him speak in front of the media, it's hard to think that this guy, whatever his dispute was, and it went right to Ryan Clark of ESPN, who then was quite clearly fed that from the Justin Reid camp that they put out there. The fact that, they weren't happy about what happened. They'd taken his helmet from him. It was the phrase used. And it said a number of things. I think it says a number of things about the organisation and considering the guy it is. I don't necessarily see how you follow it with Justin Reid, because surely his intentions are about getting better, about being better on defence and executing on a Sunday. So for them to kind of take that out on Justin Reid and do it in a very public manner seems unnecessary. And I don't see why this team wants to attract any negative publicity that they've already had or continue to have, because they've got enough of it. And to fall out with a guy like that seems odd on the face of it. But I think, for a long time now, everybody's been of the opinion that he's played his last season in Houston, which probably shouldn't be the case, and injuries have played a big part in that, right? But Justin Reid has a good future in the game if he can stay healthy. He's probably not been used correctly in a scheme here that suits him. So I think there'll be a home out there for him in the league. But the way it was put to me was that, as his agent would do, going into the final year of his contract, checked him with the organisation, and it was described to me as there wasn't enough interest there to go forward with any level of negotiation to try and put a contract in place for him to make him a Texan for another 3 or 4 year stretch. So, yeah, Justin Reid has probably played his last game, perhaps, but he'll definitely played his last season in Houston, unless something dramatically turns in the front office. But yeah, stranger things have happened. But the fact that he then came out so publicly through Ryan Clark, through Mark Berman, and gave a direct quote about a team issue that they were trying to keep internal, then forces David Culley to get him more comfortable and describe it as bigger than a disagreement. When it gets to that stage, that's things are very frayed under the surface, and I think, unfortunately, Justin Reid is on his way out of town, but it'll be a bit of a loss. But as I said, the guy's probably not realised his potential, not through wholly all fault of his own. But there you go, Justin Reid suspended for a game that the Texans could have used him, but our problems are not on defence. Our problems are firmly on offence, and I think that's blatant from the film on Sunday. Not putting a point up in the second half is not acceptable in this league. It's not acceptable for any pro team. It's not acceptable for a high school team to do that. I suppose the big change before the game, Gary Christian drops out, and Titus Howard is out there at left tackle. Oh, the irony of that all seems kind of odd. when you've had him start his career at left guard for a couple of games, then you kicked him to right tackle. He played a right tackle last season, albeit he's been injured. He's not played a full 17 games. Hopefully, touch wood, the guy's going to be healthy and put a 17-game slate together and give him the experience that he requires. But you've now played him at two different positions on the opposite side of the 5 that you did last year. Now, I suppose, why do you make that move? Is that because the team want to test out there and have maybe had some conversations or have got some inkling that they can move on from Laramie Tunsil? Now, I'd welcome that. I think everybody would know that that's my opinion, that it was a bad investment. You want to cut your losses there. And that's nothing to say about, Tunsil's his pass protection is undisputed. I think that's what nobody could question that. I think you're questioning perhaps the guy and the big trade that he came over. He probably thought he was coming to a win now situation. That's flipped on its head very, very quickly. And he's had a minor hand injury this week, or for the last 4 or 5 weeks, but shows very limited signs of returning to the field. And some of Cully's quotes around that point were very awkward. So you've got to think that perhaps there's definitely there's maybe some rumblings there that relationship may well also end as well. And I think we'll probably see this off-season being another one of transition. But why do you move Titus out there to left tackle when you've already traded 2 firsts and a second for a guy who's meant to be, 15-year, the defence of that move is a 15-year investment? It certainly doesn't seem like that if you're putting him out there at left tackle. Now, if you want to bring Corey Lindsay back in and get him to play some games, then fine, get him. I mean, he's played a lot in this league. He's got some pelts on the wall, particularly with Green Bay, and familiarity with James Camden, offensive line coach. So if that is the case, then fine. But kick him out to right tackle, because probably the weakest link after Justin McCray, obviously. Jimmy Morris didn't have a great game, but Charlie Heck on the right tackle didn't cover himself too well. Now, he's been admirable, but if you've got aspirations to be a good quality football team, Charlie Heck probably isn't a right tackle starting on your football team. Swing guy at best, for my money. So an interesting move, but again, just small snippets of this team is moving towards the future. So another point just to keep a note on. But the struggles were in the offense, and I think there was no more personified by get a short field position, the special teams back them up, the defense get a 3 and out, the offense get the ball around about the Jets' 40-yard line. It's all there to play for. Terrible run play, it gets blown up. Tyrod drops the ball. And then on the third down, Tyrod just doesn't let the play develop enough. Brandon Cooks is going in deep. There's no pressure in his face. He can just let the play develop and drop it into near the pile on the end zone. You've got a 6 there at a time you desperately needed points. And after that, you kind of knew. I mean, in the whole second half, just wasn't there. And I think the Tim Kelly play calling, is it all on him? I think obviously if you think of who's been mentored by, I won't say his name because I'm sick of talking about him, but if you think of his previous mentor and who he's learnt this offense from and who created, this offense that we're still running now, the big problem is we can't see the blitz. We can't field it. We don't make the checks. We don't cut off routes. We don't, identify the line of scrimmage and just find easy yards. And it's not necessarily the biggest thing in the world on all the time, but when your offense continually becomes unstuck by teams blitzing you at the line of scrimmage, and then ultimately it's not good enough to be a productive offense and move the chains consistently to give yourself a chance on offense. You only get 1 turnover in defense this week, then your offense is not enough to survive in a pointless second half, literally and numerically was the case. But so I think when you think with that, we've just watched the same struggles over and over again. No changes, no iterations, no development of this scheme, and I'll be glad to see the back of it, because I do firmly think Tim Kelly will go. I think it was an odd match to bring him back to try and appease Watson or whatever you want to call it. And I think in some ways he deserved it. In some ways he probably didn't, but I think you've seen this season the run game still continues to be putrid. They moved early reasonably well with a bit of power plays, pulling the guards round, and particularly Justin McCray, blocked a couple of holes in there. But I think the biggest play of the day was that they were expecting the pass, and you caught them out in a 3-man rush, and that was one of your bigger run plays of the game. And look, there was a couple of plays in there, but I thought Tim Kelly showed some great ingenuity, and I think he's got potential. A play call, there was one where Brandon Cooks was in the backfield, and then quickly flexed out Rex Burkhead, who ran across the formation, got a good matchup against a safety that he liked, and it's probably one of our better plays of the day. So there was nice snippets of that, and that on that drive was where Tyrod just overthrew Nico in the back of the end zone. Gutted for Nico not to get his first touchdown, because it'd be good for him to get that, just build a bit of confidence. But he missed him. Then a couple of plays later, we go back to the board, that Yankee concept, 2 crossers up the top right hand of the formation, and Tyrod hits on the play again. I thought it was on the touchdown play, which was the best play in the highlight reel play of the day. Was for the offense was Brevin Jordan again. We're drawing some attention, so I think that gives you some credibility to see that other teams are accounting for him. The safety then comes down. He flexes off at the line of scrimmage initially, comes back off the play. Then runs a quick in route to try and draw the safety, or perhaps more of a slant. Draws the safety, and then that gives Brandon Cooks a match up one-on-one, and most of the guys against Bryce Hall on this occasion, number 37, just come in the draft last year for the Jets, but beats him in behind. Nice catch, goes to ground, completing 6 points on the board. So at that point, you thought 14-3, this team had a chance. But I think the biggest issue, for this team is that the Jets continue to move the ball on the ground. And that's going to be a big challenge against the Colts this week, because you've seen, infamously, Jonathan Taylor picked a couple of picks later than Ross Blackhawk, who had a day to forget and has regressed after, unfortunately, after having probably one of his better games as a pro. Not hard, but certainly it was a bit more of a prouder performance from the former TCU man at defensive tackle. But yeah, the guy who was picked a couple of picks after is going to come into town, and they're going to run it down your neck. And the Texans aren't probably going to be able to hold with that, I can't see, because we can't stay on the field long enough on offense ourselves. So if they come and dominate the time of possession, it's another defeat next week, and we'll see where this goes. But certainly at the minute, we're sitting looking at second overall draft pick. That head-to-head with the Jets now will push us firmly into that second spot, because I don't see us winning 3 games to overtake them. And then you've also got probably the wild card for the remainder of the season right now is the Tennessee. They look rudderless without Derrick Henry. They've really struggled. So where they'll be, if they've not wrapped up, if they manage to scrape 1 or 2 wins, that's all they'll probably need to get in the playoffs at their final 5 games or 6 games that they've got left on the slate. Then that might be a game where you could potentially win or not want to win in the last day of the season and lose out a spot. But I think it'll come down to the Jacksonville game, whether we pick between 2nd or 4th, and that we're in contention to get a good player. But this team definitely needs it, and I think would you all the philosophy for me would be, if you're going to pick it high in the draft, you either get your quarterback, most important position, you build up your 2 lines, or you always go defense, because you can find offensive players at skill positions later in the draft. That's been proven year on year on year. So you want to really be looking at defensive players. I've said for a long time, since we did the podcast with Jordan a couple of weeks ago, that I think Kyle Hamilton for me is the guy you pick out of Notre Dame. He can impact your play, the play of your defense on every matchup. I think people are high on Aiden Hutchinson right now as it starts to get flashed out in the media, as the college games are starting to dissipate now at the end of the schedule. So it's all kind of pro stuff here from here on in, apart from the playoff stuff where Notre Dame may or may not be in, depending on how this final week goes, in terms of that committee approach that picks those final 4 spots for the college playoff. But there'll be a bowl game to be had. Likely big players are going to drop out the bowl game again. That trend will continue. But so you've probably got all the tape now that you're going to get on these guys. Going to dig into some more. But for me, I'm Kyle Hamilton until convinced otherwise. It should be the best pick for the Texans. Now, will he change his defense? Absolutely not. But I think we've got some guys up front that are interesting. I think Malik Collins, he may or may have not played his way out of town right now. And that's something we just need to consider, that interior rushers, there's not many of them out there. There's not one on every team, albeit the Jets kind of gave us some troubles there with a couple of guys. But, that's rare to have that part of your team kind of fixed. It's more kind of Roy Lopez style run stuffers and kind of multi-block guys that can consume attention to the line of scrimmage. So, but I think Malik Collins has a chance to potentially get yourself a bigger deal than may well be offered here. Or it would make sense for the team to offer him here as an interior rusher and impacting the game the way he has, but continued to be impressed by him. I think Jacob Martin flashed again, had one sack, was lost another. There was a strip fumble that came out. There was two big turnovers in the game. The strip sack, Lopez should have jumped upon it, went out. Jonathan Greenard had another great game, I think, as well, where he came in with a late hit on Zach Wilson, and Gruger Hill should have had it again. Gruger Hill getting into the backfield, he makes highlight plays. I think he's continued to be a guy at the right price you bring back. And Jacob Martin, difficult evaluation. Starts off hot in games and fades out, and could be a liability in the run game. But I think if the money's right, you bring him back. So overall, on that defensive front, there is a number of pieces there that I think you can bring back and have some foundation or some signs of life in a pro style setting that those guys can go and contribute on a Sunday. So the defense, it needs to be built upon. But if you had one of these big rushers, if it was one of those top two guys, or a guy like Kyle Hamilton, then this team is going to be in a better place. But I can't wait till the day we've got a new scheme to go and enjoy, because it's been tough watching the same shit every week, not being able to handle the blitz and all that kind of stuff. And Kelly's future's up for debate right now, but I think he'll be gone. I can't see any value in that. If you're not going to gut this coaching staff, then bring back Pep Hamilton and then increase his role in this offense. Yeah, just some general observations, I think, from the weekend there, and it was the tailgate was a sorry sight. I'm going to be honest with you. It was tough to watch, or tough to not see anybody. Stalwarts of that fan experience, people that have dedicated their lives to, or they're certainly 16 weeks of the year, or eight home games, preparing. Yeah, just some observations generally from the weekend there, I think, in terms of what it was like to be in NRG Stadium. I've heard multiple people, including John McClain, say that's the least fans I've ever seen inside the stadium. The atmosphere was muted at best, because people know where this team is, and I get that. But there's been 2-14 seasons, albeit those seasons have been underachieving rather than having a bad team and achieving roughly where about you thought the talent on the roster would be. With less than a handful of wins to probably show for it after all said and done. But yeah, it was kind of tough to take, and it's going to be a long road back, and I think you're looking at another 2 seasons before you rebuild this, and not only do you rebuild the talent of your roster, if that can then translate some confidence into the people that are going to go and buy these tickets across Houston and the wider areas, then will people come back and come and flock back to that stadium. But you could see it so visibly, albeit a holiday weekend, people are out of town. There's also a lot of people back in town for the holiday season after Thanksgiving, and to have that kind of that muted level at what is a celebratory time in the calendar was kind of a bit jarring. The weather wasn't great; it was cold, it was wet, but there was certainly a lack of people there, and I think that's just it's manifesting all the bad decisions that have been made. No more so on the player personnel side. But we'll wait and see. We talk about the Justin Reid kind of fallout and how he'll be out of town. But guys like Charles Omenihu and a long list of other people as well that have left this building pretty quickly in the last while. Then there's definitely going to be more changes like that, and it's whether do they make the iterations in the front office to learn and consider some of the mistakes that have been made, because this off-season would have been a waste of time. Therefore, this season has by definition also become a waste of time, because we're not taking a huge amount out of it, bar a small 1 or 2 players. Now this rookie class is coming beyond Garrett Wallow, look good, look potential there, but they need more players around them, vets, but not some veteran players that can come and teach and lead within the locker room and within the position meeting groups. But I think what you need is a solid base of players that can go and make this team competitive, because the Jets are not in a good spot, but to lose in that way against a team like that, who shouldn't be all that far ahead of us when all considered, but perhaps Sunday was just a bit of a reminder where this team is. And I think, as we said, sitting with the second overall pick as it stands, and it could be in that sort of 2 to 4 range. I don't think Detroit will suddenly win games. Stranger things have happened. It's been an odd season, but we're certainly trending towards that top end of the draft and get some premium talent. Obviously, the issue with Watson continues to rumble. There was some depositions reportedly taken this week of some of the victims. The intimation was the fact that they'd struggled to schedule in the depositions for Watson and his side of it. Why that would happen seems unclear, but that continues to rumble on. So until that gets settled and teams can feel comfortable about pulling the trigger on a trade, and then we can have a full bevy of picks for this draft, then it seems very bleak in some ways. I think Sunday for me was about a realization how far it's sunk when you see it live in front of your face, because the broadcast angle was certainly close to the field. You didn't see much of the stand, and I think that's the broadcasters recognising as a league that they don't want to see empty stands, because it doesn't scream great product, and that's what this sort of premier level of sport's all about. And the Texans, unfortunately, at this stage, are miles off that pace. It's been a topsy-turvy season, but the grey clouds, as they were on Sunday, continue to hang over the Houston Texans. So a very quick rundown this week, as I'm still doing a bit of travelling back. We'll be back with a guest next week, but don't lose the faith. I think that would be my message to everybody. Not in the Easterby sense, but in the sense of this team, that the better days will come around. But it is going to take time, so strap yourself in, prepare yourself, enjoy the games for what they are, with good friends, family, and definitely some drinks, because you'll need them watching, particularly that second half this week. But thanks again for listening. We'll be back next week with a guest to go over the visit in Indianapolis when they come into town. Tough test against that run game. I think we may well be exposed again, and it may just be ticking another one off till we get to an off-season where we feel like we can finally turn the corner on what's been a tough 2-year period for everybody. But keep believing, keep the faith, and we'll get there one day again. But hopefully we can try and help you out a little each and every week. If you've not checked out the website, podcasttexans.com, please leave us a review. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, give us a like, share it, all that good stuff. Let it get out there a little bit. But great to be back in Houston over the weekend. A shame about this team in many ways, and a shame about the result. But look, we're here. I'm going to stick with it, and the brighter days will come round again. But thanks again for listening, and we'll speak to you again next week.